The unexpected discovery, hook and suspense. Alex stared at the glowing screen in front of him, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He had been working late into the night on a government project, something that was supposed to be routine. But something wasn't right. The numbers on the screen didn't add up, and the more he tried to make sense of the data, the more his mind raced. He blinked and rubbed his eyes, then scrolled through the files again. His heart began to beat faster. The information he was looking at was not just ordinary data. It was a map, coordinates that didn't exist on any public chart. The map led to a location in space, far beyond what was considered human reach. Alex leaned in, his curiosity growing. His mind raced through every theory he could think of, but none made sense. If this was real, then the implications were enormous. Humanity had already been to space long before the first moon landing. They had explored places the public thought were beyond our capabilities. Suddenly, a sharp knock on the door made him jump. He quickly minimized the screen as the door clicked shut behind them. Alex felt the weight of the secret bearing down on him. The world had no idea what was really out there, and he was the only one who could expose it. But at what cost? The ancient space program. The days that followed were filled with tension and uncertainty. Alex couldn't stop thinking about what the man had said, the cold warning that lingered in his mind. The fact that someone so high up in the government had threatened him only confirmed that he was onto something huge, something that could change everything. Emily had been quiet, her concerns still heavy on her shoulders, but she couldn't deny that Alex had uncovered something extraordinary. She had always been the cautious one, but now even she was beginning to realize the gravity of the situation. In the dim light of his small apartment, Alex spent countless hours poring over the data, the coordinates, the mysterious map. It all pointed to something far beyond the capabilities of current technology. But there was one thing that still didn't add up. Why had the information been erased? Who could have done this? Late one evening, Alex managed to bypass the final layers of security in the system, uncovering files that had been locked away for decades. What he found sent a chill down his spine. The files were dated back to the 1960s, far earlier than anything he had expected. They detailed a covert program, one designed to explore the stars. According to the documents, a group of brilliant scientists and astronauts had created advanced spacecraft capable of interstellar travel. These ships didn't just visit the Moon or Mars. They traveled to distant star systems, establishing colonies in places humanity had never imagined. The implications were staggering. Humanity had already conquered space long before the first public space missions. Colonies had been established, and humanity was thriving on distant planets, far beyond the reach of the average person's knowledge. But why had it all been kept a secret? Alex's heart raced as he read through the classified reports. The truth was there, hidden in plain sight. The files spoke of a space program so secretive, it had been erased from history. The government had worked tirelessly to cover up any evidence of humanity's interstellar expansion, fearing that the public's reaction would be one of panic and chaos. If people knew the truth, that humans had already colonized space, it would undermine everything the world had been told about their place in the universe. As Alex scanned through more documents, one report stood out. It described a group of human colonies on a planet orbiting Alpha Centauri. The report explained how the colonies had thrived, building cities and industries that were light years ahead of Earth's technology. But then, the report took a dark turn. The colonies had been abandoned. The program was shut down, and all traces of the missions were wiped clean. No one knew why. Alex sat back, his mind reeling. The thought of entire human colonies out there, thriving and hidden from the world, was almost too much to process. It made no sense. Why had they been abandoned? Was it fear of exposure? Or something even darker? His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a message from Emily. She wanted to meet. He knew what this meant. She had seen something, or perhaps felt it too. The undeniable pull to uncover the rest of the story. They couldn't stop now. They were too deep into it. But Alex also knew that with each passing moment, the danger grew. Meeting Emily in a quiet, secluded cafe, Alex could see the unease in her eyes. She had read the files too, and the weight of the truth was taking its toll on her. "Alex," she began cautiously, "I don't know if we should go any further. This is bigger than we thought. If what we're seeing is real, then this could change everything. But do you really think we can handle this?" Alex looked into her eyes, his voice steady but full of determination. "We can't turn back now. These colonies, they've been out there, living their own lives, unknown to the rest of us. We have to find out why they were abandoned. We have to understand what happened." Emily nodded slowly, still uncertain but resolute. "Okay, but we need to be careful. Whoever is hiding this information won't stop at anything to keep it buried." Just as they were about to leave, a figure in a dark suit passed by the cafe window. Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was him, the man from the building. They both froze, realizing that they were being watched. They had no time to waste. The truth was out there. And now, they were being hunted. The cover-up. Alex and Emily barely had time to react before the door to the cafe swung open. The man in the dark suit, the one who had warned Alex to stop his investigation, entered. His eyes immediately locked onto them. It was clear that he had been following them since the meeting in Alex's apartment. Emily stiffened, a nervous glance flashing between Alex and the door. "We need to go," she whispered urgently, grabbing Alex's arm. But it was too late. The man in the suit walked directly toward their table, his gaze never wavering. The cafe, normally filled with chatter and laughter, suddenly felt too quiet. Alex's heart raced. He didn't know how much this man knew or what he was capable of, but the warning was clear. They were crossing dangerous lines. "Alex, Emily." The man's voice was smooth, almost pleasant. "I was hoping I'd find you here. I think we need to talk." Alex stood up abruptly, trying to keep his composure. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice tinged with the same fear he had felt during their last encounter. "I don't want anything, actually," the man replied, pulling up a chair without waiting for an invitation. "But I am here to make sure you understand the consequences of digging into things you don't understand." Emily's fingers tightened on the edge of her cup. "You've already threatened us once. What more do you want?" The man's smile didn't falter. "Nothing more, but I think you'll regret going any further. What you found is just the tip of the iceberg. The reality of what you're uncovering is something you're not prepared for. The governments, the corporations, the people in power, they've been hiding the truth about humanity's past in space for a reason." Alex's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What's the real reason?" The man leaned forward, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "There was a plan, years ago, a plan to take humanity beyond Earth. But when it became clear that humanity wasn't ready, the program was shut down. The colonies were abandoned, and the truth was erased. If the world knew that we had reached other star systems and abandoned them, it would shatter everything. The governments feared chaos. The public isn't ready for that kind of truth." Alex felt a cold knot in his stomach. The man's words echoed in his mind, as if they were a warning that had been written in stone. Why didn't anyone tell us? Why keep it a secret? The man sighed, almost as if the answer were too obvious. "Because the people in charge believe it's safer for you to think humanity has only just begun its journey into space. They don't want you to know the truth, because if you did, it would raise more questions than they could answer." Alex looked at Emily, his mind racing. "You're saying all of this, everything we've uncovered, is being kept from the world on purpose?" "Exactly," the man confirmed, his eyes narrowing. "And you can't just waltz in and expose it. People have been protecting this secret for decades. If you continue digging, you won't just be fighting the system. You'll be fighting those who've devoted their entire lives to keeping this under wraps." Emily looked visibly shaken. but her voice was firm. "So, what? You want us to back off, to forget everything we've learned?" The man didn't hesitate. "Yes, that would be the smart thing to do. Walk away before it's too late. The further you go, the more dangerous it becomes. Trust me, you don't want to know the full story." Alex felt a rush of defiance flood through him. He couldn't turn back now. The truth was too big to ignore, too important to leave buried. "I can't do that," Alex said, his voice unwavering. "We have to know what happened. We have to find out why they abandoned the colonies and why it was all kept a secret." The man's eyes hardened. "Then you're making a grave mistake." He stood up, leaving a small envelope on the table. "But when the time comes, you'll understand. You'll wish you hadn't uncovered what you're about to find." With that, the man turned and left the cafe without another word, his shadow disappearing out the door. Alex and Emily sat in stunned silence, the weight of the warning hanging in the air. "What now?" Emily asked, breaking the silence. "We don't stop," Alex said, his determination growing. "If anything, this just proves we're on the right track. We need to get to the truth, no matter the cost." They glanced at the envelope on the table, both knowing that it was their next clue. What was inside? And more importantly, who had sent it? As they opened it, they found a set of coordinates to a place that had never appeared on any map. It was a location deep in the wilderness, far from any known cities. The man's message was clear. If they wanted answers, this was where they had to go. The tension in the air was palpable, but one thing was certain. Alex and Emily were now fully committed to uncovering the secret that had been buried for decades, and no matter the risks, they were determined to find out what had really happened to humanity's hidden space empire. Chasing shadows. The next few days felt like a blur to Alex and Emily. Every moment was consumed by the urgency to uncover the truth, to decipher the cryptic coordinates left by the mysterious man. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was a matter of survival. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. It was no longer just about finding the truth. It was about exposing a secret that could change the course of humanity. And they weren't the only ones who knew. The envelope had led them to a remote location in the wilderness, a place so isolated that even the most detailed maps seemed to overlook it. With each passing hour, Alex's mind raced. Who could have chosen such a place? Why would someone go to such extremes to hide something so monumental? They had rented a car and driven for hours, leaving the safety of the city behind. As they neared their destination, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. The trees around them stood tall and unmoving, the wilderness stretching out in every direction. The silence was almost suffocating. Alex couldn't shake the sensation that they were being followed. "I don't like this," Emily muttered from the passenger seat, her eyes darting nervously to the rearview mirror. "It feels like we're being tracked. I keep seeing shadows in the trees." Alex didn't answer right away. He was already scanning the road ahead, trying to focus on the task at hand. But Emily's words weren't just paranoia. There was something off about this place. Something felt wrong. When they finally reached the coordinates, they found nothing but a large, dilapidated warehouse tucked away between the trees. It was an old structure, seemingly forgotten by time. The metal doors were rusted, and the windows were covered with layers of dirt and grime. It didn't look like a place that held any answers. But Alex knew better than to judge by appearances. The secrets they were after would never be found in plain sight. They parked a little distance away, making sure not to draw attention to themselves. The forest surrounding the warehouse was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that suggested someone, or something, was lurking just out of sight. "Do you think anyone's inside?" Emily whispered as they stood in the shadows of the trees, trying to stay hidden. "Unsure of it," Alex replied, scanning the area. "Whatever's here, it's meant to be kept secret." They approached the warehouse cautiously, their steps barely audible on the overgrown grass. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. The closer they got to the building, the more the tension in the air grew. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. As they neared the entrance, they found the large doors slightly ajar. The hinges creaked as they pushed the doors open, revealing the dimly lit interior. The smell of rust and old machinery filled the air. Inside, the space was vast, filled with crates, outdated equipment, and the remnants of a long-forgotten project. But as Alex stepped further in, he noticed something strange. There were signs of recent activity, footprints on the dusty floor, faint echoes of voices from deeper inside. Without a word, they proceeded cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the layers of dust. They moved through the cluttered space, each corner more unsettling than the last. Finally, they'd reached the back of the warehouse. And there, in the shadows, stood a large metal door, one that seemed out of place among the dilapidated surroundings. Alex didn't need to say anything. Emily could see it too. The door was different. It was newer, more secure. This was where they needed to be. Alex approached the door and tried the handle. It was locked. Of course, he muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. But there was no time to waste. They couldn't turn back now. He quickly scanned the area, looking for something that could help. His eyes landed on a control panel next to the door. It looked old, but it was a start. Alex knelt down and began working on the panel, trying to bypass the outdated security system. Emily stood watch, her eyes darting nervously around the dark warehouse, waiting for any sign that they weren't alone. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. But then, with a soft click, the door unlocked. "Got it," Alex whispered, stepping back as the heavy door creaked open. They both stood frozen for a moment, their breath caught in their throats. The air behind the door was cold and stale, but there was something more, a sense of something hidden. They stepped inside, their eyes slowly adjusting to the dim light. What they saw left them breathless. The room was filled with high-tech equipment, computers, monitors, and rows of containers marked with symbols and numbers they didn't recognize. But what caught their attention most was the large metallic structure in the center of the room. It looked like a spacecraft, something advanced, far beyond the capabilities of anything they had seen on Earth. Alex's mind raced. This was it. This was the proof they had been looking for. The abandoned space program. The truth about humanity's journey beyond Earth. Before they could get any closer, a voice echoed from the shadows. "I wouldn't get any closer if I were you." The hairs on the back of Alex's neck stood up as they both turned to face the source of the voice. Standing in the doorway was the man in the dark suit, the same one who had threatened them earlier. "We were hoping you'd find it," the man said, stepping into the room with an air of inevitability. "But now that you have, it's time to make a choice. Walk away or face the consequences." Alex stood his ground. "We're not walking away. We're going to expose this. The world needs to know the truth." The man's smile was cold, calculating. "You don't understand. You think you're the first to discover this secret. People have been trying to uncover the truth for decades, but there's a reason this place is hidden. And there's a reason you're not meant to leave with this information." Alex and Emily exchanged a glance. The stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. But they couldn't stop now. The truth was within their grasp, and they wouldn't let fear or threats stand in their way. "Then we'll see who's stronger," Alex said, his voice unwavering. The man's expression darkened. "You've been warned." And with that, the room fell into an uneasy silence. The next chapter of their journey had begun, and they were closer than ever to uncovering the truth. But as the danger mounted, Alex and Emily knew they were now playing a dangerous game, one that could cost them everything. The revelation. The tension in the warehouse was thick enough to cut with a knife. The man in the dark suit stood motionless, his eyes piercing through Alex and Emily. He had no intention of backing down, and neither did they. But something in his stance, something in the way he looked at them, told Alex that this was only the beginning of a much bigger game. Alex took a step forward, his voice steady. "We're not leaving until we know the truth. You're not going to stop us." The man's lips curled into a cold smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. There are things here that are better left untouched. Secrets that were buried for a reason." Emily, sensing the rising tension, spoke up. "Why? Why hide this from the world? Why let people live their entire lives in ignorance?" For a moment, the man said nothing, as though weighing the consequences of revealing more. His gaze flickered to the spacecraft in the center of the room, then back to them. It was clear he knew the stakes better than they did. "Because if you knew the truth," he finally said, his voice low, "the entire foundation of society would crumble. Everything you believe in, the way the world operates, would be shattered. Humanity's place in the universe isn't what you think it is. And it wasn't meant for you to know." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just about hidden space programs anymore. This was about something much bigger, something that threatened to change everything they had known about their world, their history, their future. "What do you mean?" Alex asked, his voice rising with a mix of frustration and curiosity. "What is this?" The man turned and gestured to the spacecraft, his expression unreadable. "That ship, and others like it, were part of a program that took humans beyond the stars. But it was never meant for public knowledge. You see, the colonies we established out there, on planets and other star systems, were not just settlements. They were experiments, projects that tested human adaptation to environments we shouldn't have been able to survive in." Emily's face twisted in confusion. "You're saying we went to Alpha Centauri to build colonies, but they were experiments. What kind of experiments?" The man's eyes narrowed. "Humanity was never supposed to travel so far. We were never supposed to be advanced enough for such a leap. The colonies were built to see if humanity could survive beyond Earth. But we didn't just test human survival. We tested human loyalty, resilience, and obedience. The program was meant to see if Earth's people could adapt to new worlds and build a future there. But it didn't go as planned." Alex's mind spun with the implications of what the man was saying. "So, the colonies weren't abandoned because of failure. They were abandoned because of something else." "Exactly," the man confirmed, his voice colder now. "When the program revealed that humanity's nature, our instincts, our drive, was far too unpredictable, the higher-ups made the decision to cut the project off. They didn't want humanity spreading out into the stars, becoming a force that could not be controlled. The truth was too dangerous to expose, so they erased every trace of the colonies and covered up the missions." "Who made that decision?" Emily demanded, her voice sharp. "Who decided that humans shouldn't know the truth?" The man's lips pressed into a tight line. "The same people who've been controlling what you see, what you hear, what you know. The elites, the ones who hold the power. They knew humanity wasn't ready to be exposed to the galaxy, to the unknown. They feared what would happen if people found out the truth, that humans have already stepped foot on other worlds, that we've conquered space." Alex felt a wave of realization wash over him. "And now, you're telling us to stop because we're not ready to hear the truth. We're not ready to know what's really out there." The man shook his head, his expression grim. "It's not about what you're ready for. It's about what you'll do with the information. Humanity has always been controlled by fear. If the truth came out, if everyone knew what was really out there, it would spark chaos. The world would fall apart. People would question everything. And the governments, the corporations, they would lose all power." Emily's eyes widened. "So this isn't just about us uncovering history. This is about power, about keeping humanity in the dark, so those in control stay on top." The man said nothing for a long moment, his gaze cold. Then he spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "You have no idea how dangerous this information is. You're playing with fire." Alex took a deep breath, trying to process everything. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. They weren't just uncovering secrets about space. They were uncovering the very fabric of humanity's history, a history that had been hidden from the world. And now, they were standing on the edge of an abyss, with the truth just beyond their grasp. "You're telling us we should walk away," Alex said, his voice firm. "But we're not going to. We're going to expose this. People need to know what's out there. They deserve to know." The man's eyes glinted dangerously. "You're making a mistake. There's no turning back now." He turned away, his voice fading as he walked toward the door. "You've uncovered the truth, but it's a truth that will cost you everything." Alex stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the man's words sinking in. But despite the warning, the fear, and the uncertainty, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back down. Not now. The truth was too important. "We'll make them see," Alex said quietly, more to himself than to Emily. Emily nodded, her face resolute. "We have no choice. We have to finish what we started." The room fell silent, the hum of the machines in the background filling the air. But Alex and Emily knew their journey was far from over. They had come too far to stop now, and the world was about to learn what humanity had been hiding for decades. The truth about their place in the universe, and the consequences of revealing it, would be the next chapter in their story. The Great Escape. The silence in the room was deafening as the man in the dark suit walked out, leaving Alex and Emily to process the enormity of what they had just learned. The truth was so massive, so staggering, that it was almost impossible to comprehend. The colonies, the experiments, the vast secrets buried under layers of government control. Everything about humanity's history was different than they had been told, and now they were the only ones who knew. But as the weight of their knowledge settled in, Alex realized something. The stakes had just been raised. They were no longer just uncovering the past. They were fighting for the future. The man's words echoed in his mind. "You've uncovered the truth, but it's a truth that will cost you everything." He couldn't ignore the warning. But there was no turning back now. The world had to know the truth. "We need to get out of here," Alex said, his voice urgent. "Before it's too late." Emily didn't need any convincing. They had been followed before, and she knew they were running out of time. Whoever was behind the cover-up wouldn't let them walk away unscathed. They had crossed a line, and now they had to escape before they became the next target. The two of them quickly gathered what they could from the room. Some of the files, a few images, anything that could help them expose the truth. The spacecraft in the center of the room was a testament to what had been hidden for so long, but they couldn't stay. The man would have alerted his superiors by now, and they were already too close. They moved through the dark warehouse, their footsteps quick but quiet, trying to avoid making any noise that might give them away. As they neared the exit, Alex's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, his stomach sinking when he saw the notification. It was from an unknown number. The message was simple, but the meaning was clear. "You're not going to get away. Not this time." Alex's heart raced. They were being tracked. The man had already made sure they wouldn't escape. They had to act fast. "Emily," Alex said, his voice low. "We've been compromised. We need to move now." They rushed to the back door of the warehouse, but as they stepped into the darkened alley outside, they saw two black SUVs parked at the entrance. The unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from the distance, growing louder. "Too late," Emily muttered, her face pale. Alex's mind raced. There was no way they'd make it out in time. The only chance they had was to find a way to lose their pursuers. He grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her into a narrow side street, hoping to lose them in the maze of alleys that wound through the industrial area. As they sprinted through the dark streets, Alex glanced over his shoulder. The SUVs were following, but they hadn't caught up yet. They were close, though. They had to find somewhere to hide, somewhere they could regroup. Ahead, he saw an old, abandoned building. The windows were boarded up, but there was an entrance at the back. It wasn't ideal, but it was their best shot. Over there, Alex shouted, pulling Emily toward the building. They reached the back entrance and slipped inside, their breath heavy from the sprint. Inside, the building was empty, just an old warehouse, the floors covered in dust. They crouched down, listening for the sound of approaching vehicles. The minutes felt like hours, the tension in the air unbearable. "Do you think they saw us?" Emily whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know," Alex replied, his heart pounding. "But we can't stay here long. We need to make sure we're not followed." They waited in silence for what seemed like an eternity. The sound of footsteps grew fainter, then disappeared altogether. Alex carefully peeked out from the corner of the building. The SUVs had passed by, but there was no sign of them turning back. They had lost them. For now. "We need to get to a safe place," Alex said, his mind already racing with the next steps. "We can't go back to the apartment. We need to disappear for a while." Emily nodded. "I know a place, but it's risky. If they're looking for us, they'll probably expect us to run there. Then we'll have to be smart. No more mistakes." They made their way through the abandoned building and out into the night, sticking to the shadows as they moved. They knew they couldn't stay in the city much longer. The people who were after them had far more resources, far more power than they did. But Alex wasn't willing to let that stop them. They had already uncovered a truth too dangerous to ignore, and they had to keep moving forward. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about exposing the truth that could change everything. And if they had to run, if they had to hide, then that's what they would do. They wouldn't stop until the world knew what had been hidden for so long. As they disappeared into the night, the weight of the truth pressed on their shoulders. The forces that controlled this secret were powerful, but they were not invincible. Alex and Emily knew that no matter how many times they were chased, no matter how many threats were made, they would never give up. The world would know the truth. The truth about humanity's secret empire in space, and everything that had been hidden for so long. The world awakens. The days following their narrow escape were filled with tension, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Alex and Emily had found shelter in a secluded safe house, miles away from their previous location. They stayed low, avoiding any public attention, and meticulously planned their next move. Their lives had been turned upside down, but they knew that what they had uncovered couldn't stay hidden any longer. The truth was too big. It was too important. They couldn't let the world continue to live in ignorance. "We need to make sure this information gets out," Emily said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty. They were sitting in the small living room of the safe house, surrounded by old equipment and the files they had taken from the warehouse. "But we can't trust anyone who's already in the system. We need to find a way to bypass the control that's out there." Alex nodded, his mind spinning with the possibilities. The data's too explosive, too dangerous for them to just let go. They'll try to suppress it. But if we can get it into the right hands, then maybe we can wake up the world. For days, they worked tirelessly, trying to decipher the final pieces of the puzzle. They knew they couldn't simply release the information. They needed a plan, a way to ensure that the world would be ready for the truth when it came out. They needed to control the narrative, to make sure that people would understand the significance of what they were about to reveal. Then, one night, after hours of hard work, Alex found it, the final piece of the puzzle. A data transmission system embedded deep within the files they had recovered. It was designed to send an encrypted message to a hidden network, one that had been built long ago, outside the reach of the government's surveillance. This was the key to reaching the right people, the ones who had been searching for the truth, but had never been able to access it. "We have to go live," Alex said, his voice full of urgency. "This is it. We're not going to get another chance." Emily didn't hesitate. She quickly connected the encrypted files to the system, her fingers moving with practiced precision. They both watched as the data began to transfer, the countdown ticking in the corner of the screen. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The suspense was unbearable. Would they be able to get this information out in time? Or would the forces hunting them find them before they could finish? Finally, the transfer completed. A message appeared on the screen. Data sent successfully. Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The information was out there now. The world would know. But just as they were about to exhale in relief, a sound cut through the air, the unmistakable roar of engines. "They're here," Emily said, her voice tight with fear. "We need to move. Now." The escape wasn't as easy this time. They had no time to plan their route, no time to make their way to safety. The SUVs were closing in, and Alex knew they were running out of options. They had to act fast. They packed up the essentials, leaving the safe house behind in a hurry. As they slipped out the back door, Alex's mind raced. He knew the truth was out there now. It was too late for the authorities to stop it. The world would wake up to the reality that humanity had already conquered space. The government's secrets would no longer be theirs to control. But as they ran, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The truth might be out, but the battle for it was far from over. The world would change in ways no one could predict, and with it, the course of history would shift. They reached a nearby alley, but as they turned the corner, they were met by a wall of shadowy figures, blocking their escape. The same dark-suited men. They had been waiting for this moment. "End of the line," one of the figures said, his voice devoid of emotion. Alex and Emily stopped in their tracks, their backs against the wall. It was clear that they were trapped, but Alex wasn't ready to give up. They had made it this far, and he wouldn't let it all be for nothing. The leader of the group stepped forward, his face cold and emotionless. "You've exposed the truth," he said, "but you'll never see the consequences of it. Not if we can help it." Emily reached for her phone, her hand trembling. But Alex stopped her. "Don't. There's no escape this time." For a moment, the world seemed to slow down, the tension thick in the air. But then, just as the figures closed in, a sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath them. The force was so powerful that it sent the dark-suited men scattering, and the sound was deafening. "What the hell?" Alex shouted, looking around in confusion. A vehicle roared into the alley, its headlights blinding in the dark. The back door slid open, revealing a familiar face, a former astronaut who had helped uncover the first hints of the cover-up. "Get in," the astronaut shouted, motioning for them to jump into the vehicle. Without hesitation, Alex and Emily dove into the back seat, and the vehicle sped off into the night. The explosion had created just enough of a distraction to give them a chance at survival. As they drove away, Alex turned to the astronaut, his voice filled with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "Who are you working for?" The astronaut glanced back at him, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "We've been working to uncover the truth too. It's not just you and me anymore. The world's awake, and the people who've been hiding this for so long won't be able to stop what's coming." The vehicle sped through the dark streets, leaving the chaos behind. Alex and Emily exchanged a look of relief. The world had just been awakened to the truth about humanity's hidden empire in space, and now nothing would be the same. But as they drove into the unknown, they both knew that the journey was far from over. The consequences of their actions would reverberate across the globe, and they would have to face them head-on. They had sparked the change, but what came next would shape the future of humanity forever. And this time, there would be no turning back.